We'd like to welcome all you folks out there back to the Trampled Underfoot Podcast show. This is Mark Lindsay over there and Eloy Escagedo over there in Oregon and over here in Florida. And, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever does happen, it's sure to be entertaining or confusing. So we shall find out.
Or entertainingly confusing, maybe?
Or that.
Or
any
confusingly entertaining? Or
yes, any variation thereof.
Higgledy-piggledy, a real mess.
Well,
oh, man. I'm
What's
telling
that?
you. Well, I made a mistake. I ordered dinner tonight, ordered us a pizza. And I don't know, have you ever done the Papa Murphy's hashtag not sponsored take and bake pizza?
No.
Where you order the pizza, they make it, but they don't cook it. So you go pick up, you got a raw pizza, you bring it home, you put it in the oven, bake it yourself. That's fine. I mean, they're not expensive. I mean, they're about half the price of a regular pizza, and they're actually pretty decent. Well, we had never had one of their stuffed crust pizzas before, so I ordered one. But I made a huge mistake. I ordered the family size, thinking, well, we can have leftovers tomorrow. We got that sucker, and it was the size of the garbage can lid.
Wow.
Now, it was not expensive. It was not expensive at all.
So what are you trying to say? Didn't fit in your oven?
No, we got it fit in the oven just fine.
Rolled up.
What I brought home was about maybe 3/4 of an inch thick.
Okay.
That sucker rose in the oven to where it was about 2.5 inches thick. I mean, it was a huge, thick pizza because the crust rose in the oven. 2 pieces was all I could handle. So we've got, probably 2/3 of a family size pizza left over in the fridge for lunches for the rest of the week, dude. Oh,
you can here pass the slice over.
But I'm telling you, I am so full right now that I'm about ready to go to sleep. So I'm counting on you to keep me awake. And again, Papa Murphy's, this, not sponsored, but if they want to send us coupons, contact information on our website, www.trampledunderfootpodcast.com.
Nice. Pizza is obviously, as everybody knows, was invented in 1897 in Ohio, here in the United States, and has been a staple of our diet ever since. Just a little background information for all of you educated people out there.
Address your letters to Eloy Escagedo. That's one of those things that Americans got a little sniff of, then just ran wild with it. I mean, it just, the GIs, the American GIs that got a little bit of pizza over in Italy during the wars, World War II, brought it back, and oh man, did they ever run with it. And gosh, I mean, I don't know if that's an example of American excess or American success or both. But I can't imagine life without pizza. To me, it's almost the perfect food. Pizza and sandwiches, I'd be a happy guy for the rest of my life.
This is literally where cultures come to jump in the blender, and whatever good thing or even bad thing that exists beyond our threshold somehow gets put in the pot or whatever device. What cooking implement would mix stuff? A blender in the blender, and reinvented in the most American. I guess it's the American way, because it's repackaged for our consumption, and apparently we like it.
Well, it's kind of a demonstration of American excess and American ignorance, in that if we hear, okay, obviously pizza is Italian, but if we hear something that has an Italian name, we'll throw it on there thinking it's authentic. not even realizing that in Italy, they don't even have 2/3 of the combinations we have decided to make. And I'm not even going to get into the argument about pineapple on pizza. Um, they would consider half of what we have just complete sacrilege.
Yeah, but let me
So,
just say this: if and there's a so and I understand, right? I agree, but
yeah.
just to add, because if not, we have nothing to talk about. Um, if if I just simply just surrendered there, and so I'll just say this, and this is pertinent here. To be fair, if you an Italian in Italy has their environment with the things that they use to cook their pizzas
Mhm.
and do all their thing, but we're in America, and we do have certain. Boy, that sounds arrogant, but we're in America, so they better adapt. No, but we're in America, and we have sort of our locale, sort of like variations and stuff,
Mhm.
and we'll adapt accordingly, like any other human being. But I will say this: if you take an Italian and you put them somewhere, as a good example, somewhere completely, if you put an Italian in Cuba,
Mhm.
um, there is Cuban pizza in America. There's Cuban pizza in Cuba, but they don't have all the products to put into it.
Sure.
It's just bread with ketchup. But here there's a thing called Ray's Pizza. They have them in New York. They have them, just
Mhm.
so there's a variation because there were Italians that went to, instead of the U.S., to Cuba, right?
Mhm.
Um, but notwithstanding, if an Italian were to be stranded on an island with bread plus tomatoes, for whatever reason, put tomato sauce plus pineapples, after 10
Well,
years, he could fight it all he wants. He or she could fight it all they want, but after 10 to 15 years of them honoring the tradition, I can guarantee you they will come up with pineapple pizza.
oh yeah,
You know?
traditions change the minute your locations change. Definitely. I mean,
Yeah,
it wasn't like it was a bunch of Scottish folks that decided to put bacon on pizza. That wasn't necessarily the case. It You go with the ingredients you have.
yeah,
If you're in an area where you don't have tomatoes, you can't get a hold of tomatoes. Obviously, you can't do a tomato based sauce.
right,
So you adapt. And
yeah.
that's what a lot of American food is. It is based on traditional recipes from the quote unquote old country that was adapted to the ingredients that were here before there was international shipping as a common thing.
I got to tell you this. It's funny that we're talking about food. I did not, but whatever. Somehow,
Me,
it,
but
somehow,
it's always the case.
um, I saw a video that was the most exaggerated thing. Awesome, but so overboard that it's not that you wouldn't believe it, you guys. It's just that it was savage. So this is what it was. Two huge YouTubers, according to them and according to the commenters and the numbers that the video had. I
Mhm.
just don't know about them. I just ended up there because of the topic. I found it curious, like most of us do anyhow nowadays. um, Decided to get together and go feast at this place somewhere in California that's a marina, Southern California, I believe it was, perhaps closer to San Diego than not. I'm not sure, I forget now. And they decided to go into this marina where they do the food. And what they do is they have their butcher shop, and they have their fish on ice like you would at a regular supermarket. And you go as a customer and you buy by weight all the stuff you want, and they bag them. They start bagging them, and they hand them to you. And then
Uh-huh.
you take them. Once you're done, you take them to a location, the kitchen. They cook it with vegetables and seasoning, all on a flat grill,
Uh-huh. Griddle, yeah.
griddle, and they take one of those double-sized McDonald's type plastic trays, and
Uh-huh.
they put two papers, and they extend the papers, and they start dumping into a mountain of, well, these guys spent probably about $600-700 on seafood. They picked one fish that was like $99, and then shrimp and lobsters. So all sorts of different sort of
Uh-huh.
fish and seafood, and they added the sauce. They took to the little outdoor or huge outdoor area. They sat down with the thing, and it was a pile of shrimp and it was just, and the butter, the way they cook it, they flood it with butter and they turn it. It's like a massive mountain. It was just these two guys. They sat down and they were like being silly, and they were posing for the camera, and they were lifting the like slightly lifting the tray with each of them for
Thumbnail.
the thumbnail shot.
Yeah.
And it was this first thumbnail, and they kept going. And as they were doing that, all the oils were spilling onto the table. They created it was the most chaotic mess, fish and everything all over. Well, they started eating. By the time they ended their feast, their hands, and like when you go to barbecue,
Oh yeah.
well, in this case, their hands were full of, they were a complete hot mess, but it was an impressive amount of food and cooked in that. I don't know that it's doesn't exist in other parts of the world. Obviously, there's a few main elements like buying, cooking, and outdoor dining that could appear anywhere on Earth, but it appears like a very American thing in that, at least all of it did, but at least if not for all those other things that are common to human beings around the world, the quantity
Yes.
that they decided to go with was so exaggerated.
Yes.
Mountain.
Yes. That is definitely an American thing. Now, I'm not going to say there aren't big people all over the world. There are. I mean, I've seen them. Just go to a German swimming pool. They have indoor swimming pools all over the place. They love to swim. Just go to a German swimming pool and look around. There are big people everywhere. But the volume, the size, the portions of our meals are up to double what I've seen around the world. Now, that's not always true. That's not always the case. You go to, and I'm sad to say it, I kind of hang my head in shame, but I've done it. You go to a Burger King in France or a Burger King in Germany, they're about the same size as in the U.S.
Let go of my butter bun, you son of a
The
gun.
only difference is they still treat that kind of thing as a treat. They don't make it a steady diet like we do. You and I know people that eat fast food, 6, 7, 8 times a month, maybe 3, 4 times a week if you want to get into it. They don't do that. It's still, to them, that's kind of a treat. It's once in a blue moon type of a thing. 3, 4 times a year at that. There are exceptions to every rule. But we beat everybody when it comes to just your standard portion size, whether we're in our own homes or if we're at a restaurant or something like that.
I wonder, because I'm going to be honest with you, as honest as I can be with all the missing information and data that I have stored in my mind that I don't have stored in my mind. As far as I can tell, I'm being honest with you. For all intensive purposes, I'm trying to give you as raw of a unfiltered. The American thing, and using that, it's not that I'm unaware of that example that you gave by any stretch of the imagination, but I think, I don't know about Canada, but if you go south of the border, I think it's a American trait, etc., inclusive of Central and South America as well. And I'll just tell you why. And I don't know about Canada because I've never really necessarily. If you ever, and I don't know, see, this is the problem. If you are ever here in Miami, there's a lot of choices for food. But if you ever for me, it would be breaking the mold. Not anymore, but like traditionally, to go to like let's say a Nicaraguan place, which there's plenty of. They're called fritangas, and they're like little, just in a strip mall or in whatever, and it's basically it looks like like a food by the pound type thing. They have their little window there, and you tell them I want this, and that. By the end of the thing, you've got your plate. Their portions are epic. They're not like the fish thing that I said, like a frickin', but you're taking with you a huge the rice. It's not even normal for one human being to eat that much rice, and they pile up the rice, the frickin' beans, the this, the that, the meat, and it's like this huge pile of this and that. And they're traditionally a Central American thing and this and that. So I couldn't tell you if, but you get my point.
Do you think they sized up the portions because that was their perception of America?
Well, the locals that usually go there originally, it's an incredible thing. They started here in the 70s, roughly coming over. Although there were always some, but there were, and then they started opening the fritangas. And at first, because I remember I was a little kid, my friend would say, "Hey, come on, let's go over to this place." Well, what for? And I'm gonna get a dessert, and they also have desserts. And I wasn't aware of it, but I was a kid again. Then again, but I was exposed to it. And then he said, "Hey, man, another day, hey, let's have a meal over there." And I said, "If we can have the dessert after, I'm down with that." And so we'd go over, and then we'd have the meal plus the dessert, and I started getting exposed to it. So I grew up eating, these things that I don't know. To tell you the truth, I gave you the backstory there, but I don't know if they expanded it because the locals that first approached and to eat it were the local Nicaraguans, but maybe those local Nicaraguans were used to the American way of the meal, and so everything adapted to it because of the U.S. I don't know. That's a good question.
I know that big meals became an American thing in that it was kind of a way to demonstrate the bounty that we had here, that the average person could go out. I mean, whether you're a hunter, a fisherman, or what have you,
it's insane.
There were huge amounts, and at first not that much competition. And I don't know, I really don't know when it started. But the huge meal. But then again, you also have to remember that back in the day, most of these folks were subsistence farmers, or if they worked for somebody else, that was hard manual labor, because the technology and the machines that we have today just didn't exist. No. So, if you're out there with a horse plowing 40 acres, you do work up an appetite because you're burning it off. And, 10,000 calories a day was nothing. Right. Because, especially when you're burning off 12. So as we've gotten more sedentary in our lifestyles and spend more time sitting down and less time actually up and working, tradespeople accepted, because, I mean, there are still folks in cabinet shops. There are still folks out there, still electricians and plumbers and pipe fitters and everybody else, carpenters. But the majority of us aren't doing that kind of manual labor anymore. But the size of our meal portions have not gone down. If anything, they've gone up.
That's hilarious. I will, yeah. So well, you do remember, we all remember, just anywhere you looked on TV, commercials, magazines, just everywhere you looked, the typical American family breakfast scene. I don't even have to describe it for you because you already can picture all the different variety, including the pancakes and bacon and the this and the that. I know that it's a Hollywoodized thing, but it did have, it had to have had massive
It
influence.
did. It had roots. That does have roots. That was actually started by a pig farmer who, because normally you would have a piece of bread, something to drink, and then go out and work. And the big meal was lunch. And then, something maybe not huge for after work was done, your dinner.
Mm-hmm.
But and it is still that way in a lot of Europe. The big meal is the lunch, and then dinner is like cold cuts, a charcuterie board, something like that.
Right.
And this guy basically, in order to sell more of his product, started convincing people, no, you need a big hearty breakfast to have the energy to work through the mornings. And that's where the idea of the bacon and eggs, and that was his suggestion, bacon and eggs with bread for breakfast. And that was sometime in the 1850s, 1860s. Because before that, it wasn't a huge breakfast. And we, for many, many, many decades, we were the only country that actually did something like that. I mean, you look at breakfasts around the world, and it's nothing as big as what we do. The one exception being the full English breakfast, which is just huge. And I think they just did it to kind of say, oh, yeah, America, try this on for size.
The British breakfast, the full one. So I don't know how the development of that in history, but there's a video where an American guy said, all right, we're going to put this up to the test. We're going to see what's what. We're going to throw it down on the table and let's settle this, which is better. And it wasn't a scientific thing because he's the one that's going to decide which is better. Plus, he's cooking it. So he did a full English breakfast, and he did a full-on American breakfast, and he did everything one at a time, and then at the end he ate from both of them, and he gave us a little bit, and he settled on the English breakfast, and he said because there's so many combinations with the toast and the beans and the this and the that, and but I looked at both of them, and I did think of the English breakfast. Looking at it, I was thinking, man, there's a lot of good stuff there. But I looked at the pancakes, and there's something wonderful about that. But I'm biased. I really love pancakes, and I love the whole setup with the bacon and the egg. It just, to me, I would have picked the American one, even though the other one looks. We're not going to go ahead and battle over that one. They're both great. But what was funny is that in the comments section, obviously the title said English breakfast, the American breakfast challenge, or whatever the title was. So people come to weigh in. We're going to defend our place, mother truckers. We're going to go ahead and so you read the comments, and the British people started popping in. And they were nice because the guy was very polite to the whole thing. He was very appreciative of the English breakfast as well as the American thing. But the British said, one thing I will tell you, mate, and they all said this down the line, I will have to be honest with you. You will not find one English person, not one, that will do what you did and make his baked beans from scratch. We use Heinz.
Yes.
and so, but good form, old chap, good form. So they just get the, and they do it up. So I found that really cool, that whole, and the explanation and stuff. There was actually education, even though it was a gluttonous video to watch. There was education there, at least on a social, historical. So it was really cool.
And you mentioned something there just in passing, the Heinz baked beans thing. That kind of dates where the full English breakfast started, because their Heinz baked beans is relatively new as compared to the other stuff in a full English breakfast. But it's funny that you mention Heinz, because they are, almost rabid defenders of the Heinz baked beans brand. I mean, there are other baked beans companies out there, but you put 10 Brits in a room and you ask their opinion, and I'm willing to bet you that 10 out of 10 will tell you Heinz is the brand that they would want, that they wouldn't even look at the other brands.
I just want to interject this. And by the way, wipe your chin, Jim. Continue.
It's my edit. I'll take that out. Yeah.
No, but what doesn't matter because it makes no reference because there's no suggested,
Yeah.
People would have to. We're what's good? Because what's good is that what's good is that the carousel wording, when you replay it, it never aligns. So for some reason, so you never know quite if we're referring to something. You know what I'm saying? So whatever.
But yeah, but on the other side of that coin, that's one thing that I still have a problem with. And you can find videos on YouTube, breakfast in this country or breakfast in that country, or what do they have for breakfast around the world? Most of the things that other folks eat for breakfast around the world are not something that I would ever associate with breakfast. And I know that's Hollywood. Because like the full English breakfast, I would never consider baked beans for breakfast. That's just not something that I associate with breakfast.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither.
Baked beans are a dinner time thing because they have to cook all day. I get it. If you have some left over, you have them maybe with breakfast in the morning, but that's an all day thing. They take a long time to cook is my point.
Yeah.
But I tend to associate that more with it as a side dish for barbecue. I would I would never put it in, for breakfast, but I guess that's another big one there. Beans on toast. And some people put cheese on it.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it's okay. It's not the end of the world, but
no, it's not. Different folks for different strokes, man, and you do you.
No, but as a smorgasbord of different things, the English breakfast, having the beans and having the this and that, in that context. But if you drop a plate of that type of bean in front of me, I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a regional thing. Yeah. It really is. And I find that more to be in the Midwest and the Northeast. That now there's exceptions to every rule. There are other places that do like their beans, but you'll find it more often than not up in those areas. I mean, I like baked beans. We have them every once in a while. But again, I kind of associate it with, barbecue or summertime foods, I don't know why.
Yeah.
I just do. It's the same thing with coleslaw, potato salad, and macaroni salad. To me, those are summertime. You have them with barbecue or some other type of outdoor, quote unquote, type meal.
There's also the thing that we now substitute quality for quantity as well. I don't know. Well, we've talked about this, but I see it. If I go to, we were talking about fast foods and such. I did mention that I went to fast food, the Burger King, and they didn't have any freaking, because of all this weird shortage and employees and this whole, like end of the world, But when I have in recent times gotten a burger or anything, like I stopped going to McDonald's as an example completely. I used to really enjoy, originally I used to really enjoy their Big Macs, but it became, when you order it, it was like a poor excuse for a Big Mac. Yeah. And so I stopped with the Big Mac because I remember Big Macs being freaking awesome. I mean, everything was nice and nice. And then I said, well, we'll stick with the filet-o-fish.
Mm-hmm.
because I like the filet o fish. It's got its tartar sauce and a little bit of cheese on it, and this, and that, and so I started eating that. Well, they screwed that up too, and so oh, good. I was fixing to do that. So yeah, so the quality has gone down.
Right.
All right.
It really did. And I don't have anything that I can actually point the finger at any specific time when that started going downhill, but long about, I don't know. I'm going to say the mid 90s. It really started a downhill trajectory that has continued to this day. There are a few exceptions. I know we're being brand name heavy here, but I have yet to get a bad sandwich at Arby's or Wendy's. I get bad sandwiches. I haven't been to McDonald's in probably, well, heck, since we left Germany. So that was 30 years ago. Burger King is hit and miss. We have a chain out here called Jack in the Box. They're hit and miss. See, you have Hardee's back there. Out here, it's Carl's Jr. They're hit and miss. But I don't think I've ever gotten a bad meal from Wendy's or Arby's. And if I was going to have to put my finger on what is my favorite fast food joint, it would be Arby's. Because of the variety there. It's not the same thing stacked in a different way. You know what I mean? There are various different types that you can get.
I love Arby's. I worked at Arby's. I was like 15 or 16 years. It was my second job. I rose the ranks from McDonald's to Arby's. I felt like I had gone from like the mailroom into corporate. Because it was like, now I can, because they would always give you a meal when you had a break. Well, now I can have Arby's instead of the crappy. When you're a kid, you're not really. And I did get an upgrade with the pay and whatnot. But this is to Arby's, credit, or at least, or maybe my insatiable appetite. Even though I worked there and ate plenty of Arby's, and their turnovers, their apple turnovers and cherry turnovers are awesome. The chocolate ones. I mean, there's so many things. Even after I worked there and I left there, I never got bored of it. To this day, I'm sure I don't know nowadays, but I love it. So I can't say anything bad about Arby's.
Well, they have so many good things there. That's the thing. You can go in and I can get a deluxe roast beef with cheese sauce and throw some horsey sauce on the bun, and I'm good. I can chow down. I'm a happy guy. But maybe next time I want a brisket sandwich, or maybe the next time I want a chicken sandwich. There are so many good things there to choose from. They're my favorite. I'll quit doing that. And the folks at Arby's, our contact information can be found on our website, www.trampledunderfootpodcast.com. So if you want to send us coupons, we're ready takers. Hashtag not sponsored.
Well, I won't do it like that. So I saw this video, and we can we'll see how it goes. And I don't know. I don't think that you saw it. It's a 2-hour interview.
I did not see it. I know what you're talking about. You sent me the link to it, and I saw like the first 10 minutes of it, and then I had to go.
Okay. So, but I'll give you the overview.
Okay.
Because it was a 2.5-hour thing. So, back during the George Bush era, back during the 9/11 era, as we all know, prior to 9/11, at least for me, and I think it holds true for many people, it was, especially in Americans, it was a moment of a huge shift in many ways, for Americans, the way we looked at the world being exposed. Just 1,001 different things occurred, and legislatively also and whatnot. We've all seen movies, I would assume, where these international agents are going from one place to the other, and covert operations where they take down bad guys in different places and all these things, um, spies and
Yeah.
secret letters passed under briefcases, and uh, rendezvous and cafes somewhere in Europe and all that stuff. So this guy was interviewed by a gentleman called Jordan Peterson. Funny enough, from Canada, Jordan Peterson, and he's a professor, psychologist, author. He does lectures and all that stuff. And so he interviewed this guy. He has a YouTube channel, and it's the life of this man that, because of his location, he was born in Mauritania, and because of his location and some of the people around him that he had no idea of, later was found to be true. They had connections or possible connections, if only a brief encounter, with Osama bin Laden.
Okay.
And this guy, because of being in the vicinity of other people that were in the vicinity, ended up, and he was living in Canada, ended up being extradited, put back and forth, and this and that. By the end, it started when these secret agencies, these three-letter alphabet agencies, he fell in their radar. They don't know nothing about him other than what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And it started like that. And he goes through the explanation, but he was sent to Jordan, interviewed there, sent over here, sent over there, put in a jail over here. But he would be released. And eventually he got back home. They sent him. He had no idea what the hell was going on. Like, he was like, what are you talking about? And he gave them all the information. Look, this is who I am. This is what this is where I live. And these are like not nomadic, but these are like Bedouin people. So the guy's like, this is my village and this and that. And they sent him back, and they came again, agents and secret agents. And he got in the car, and as they drove away, he saw his mom in the rearview mirror getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And then they turned to right, he said. And as he's talking to Jordan Peterson, he said, that's the last time. I didn't know it then. That's the last time I ever saw my mother. And they didn't. And after that, they never even allowed me to say goodbye. He was taken and eventually ended up in Guantanamo base.
Okay.
Where he was methodically tortured, sexually, with implements, physically, beatings. And it went on and on and on. And they were saying, confess. Where are they? Where are the bad people? Where are they? And this, I learned a lot of lessons from watching this. This gentleman that's a Bedouin from somewhere in the desert, he's a human being. He's a human being. That's a fact. And we're all, but he's also an intelligent human being. And this goes to when we perceive people beyond our mental borders and our physical borders and all sorts of things. We can't know everything that other people know or don't know. We can get clues as we go, but things like language. So he couldn't speak their language, the English language, but he, in jail, just listening to the guards, and they gave him books and stuff, he learned how to speak English on his own. I mean, not perfectly, but he learned how to speak English. So this guy wasn't an idiot, but he happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, by the accounts of the situation. And he learned to speak English. They tortured him, and he kept telling the interviewer, Jordan Peterson, that I couldn't tell them anything or not tell them something because whatever I told them wasn't the truth and I was going to still get beat. So I was stuck, and he was saying it in his manner. In one way or the other, whatever I said, I was stuck, but I wanted to stop, and it's horrendous, the things he talks about. And by the way, this is Guantanamo, so this is an American base, and these are CIA and agents and military and stuff that are there. He didn't know. He was trying to mathematically figure out what to do. Like, how do I do this? So they beat him so much, and they recorded not the beatings. They have it all came out on trial. I mean, a judge released his ass like 2 days from Sunday. He said, no evidence, out. They detained him even after they knew he was innocent, and this is how they found out he was innocent. He was so beaten that he said, I'm going to go ahead and call the main Mr. Collins or Sergeant Collins or something like that. They give him a fake name to call him.
Uh-huh.
The guy that he'd release all the information to it when he finally just said, fine, I'll tell you the truth. So he said, you know what, I'm ready to confess. They did all sorts of stuff to him.
Yeah.
They said, okay. So they brought the main guy. And he says, I'm ready to confess. He sat down with him, and everything and anything, he said, yes, I did this, yes, and when you were in Canada, those people that were around, yes, he said, yes, all of those are, and none of them were.
Uh-huh.
But he said, yes, absolutely, we were plotting and stuff. But where did you get we were ready to make bombs. So where did you get the ingredients for the bomb? We had some Ukrainians that we hooked up with. He said,
lied his way through it.
He said, screw it, I'm going to give them everything so they get it over with,
mm-hmm.
and either kill me, because he has no idea there are no rules. I mean, he wasn't being treated by any rules. It was a subway station in the Matrix scene, sort of purgatory where you can't really, there's no exit. So he didn't know. So he figured, I'm going to go ahead and end it now. Let them do their worst. So my pain is over. So he gave them everything, and he was like, very good, very good. And because of him giving them everything, they stopped beating him. So he got his desired result of maybe not instantaneous death, like throwing him to sharks or something, but at least his pain was over. They put him in a cell, like a small cell, and he could actually fall asleep, because they do all sorts of the tortures were insane with, and so he stopped. But the problem is that it wasn't true.
Right.
And now that they had this information, they were trying to figure it out, and nothing freaking matched. So so before they didn't do their due diligence, because who am I to speak? But if you've got a person that's a human being, they're not like a Kentucky Fried Chicken sitting in a warehouse ready to be deep fried. It's a human being, and there's a process. I would assume that there's a process. Okay, we've got all these indicators, but in this case, and I don't know if there were others that were similar, but in his case, they should have done some sort of like backtracking and saying, okay, so this is a check, but they had not done that. They were just squeezing him to get information, and but now they started investigating, backtracking, because now they have information from him, and they found that nothing freaking matched at all. Like, they're saying, this is screwed up. So another guy came and he said, you're lying. You didn't do any of this, which again was the result that he would have wanted initially, for them to understand that he didn't do crap. But it took all that and him being, dude, he was penetrate. He was penetrate. They did screwed up things to this guy. And but he couldn't let him. So he said, "We're gonna give you a
Polygraph.
a polygraph." So they give him a polygraph, and he passed it that he was lying, or he failed it that he wasn't. You know what I'm saying? Like he was lying, that he didn't do none of that. And then they discussed it. And they said, "No, next week we're gonna come back and do another polygraph." They came back. They did again. No, he didn't do any bombs, and he was saying, "Yes, I did bombs. I did bombs. I did this. Yes, I did," in his way, because in his calculation, with the limited access he had, I mean, he's not even a human anymore, treated as such, that now he's got a good life within his miserable life where he's not getting beat. So if you take that away from him, they find out that no, he's lying. He doesn't want to go backwards into the beating and all that stuff. He likes where he's in his jail. He likes where he is in his comfortable jail. But he failed it, and they realized it. So this went on for 14 years. He was in his early 30s when he started. They destroyed this guy's life. Notwithstanding, there's all sorts of horrors, but we're talking about this particular thing, right? This is a lesson, just a lesson. So it wasn't until some British activists got lawyers involved in an international effort to suss out what the hell's going on, because they were in no man's land, these people. I didn't consider them at all myself, but who am I? I remember the time frame.
Well, we didn't know about them.
Well, we knew there were people I knew there were people in Guantanamo,
yes,
linked to the terrorist attacks,
and people that were taken off of the battlefield that had operational intelligence and things
people
like
that were
that.
Yes. So in my understanding, as a citizen, that's all I really need to know. I mean, I could have, but that's it, But obviously, these are individual lives. Like, there's so. Sure. So these lawyers, they finally got the back and forth. They came to meet him, and the military, the government, and their people gave those lawyers his confession, but denied them the polygraphs, and denied them the extra information that there's no information. They denied the lawyers, as lawyers do, as much as they can, as we've seen with this latest case here in Kenosha, that the lawyers denied the perfect video for their own. And that's not the way law, and that's not the way, I think it's completely unethical to such an extreme, but whatever. So they questioned him. They said, dude, you confessed. And it took that much time after that for him to transmit what had happened, until finally they brought it in front of an American judge, and they put it all out, and they said, free. That guy, he told that whole story. So that's why it took that long, but it's even more horrendous. It's so horrendous. Well, long story short, the guy, a lot of lessons there. The guy suffers from nightmares and PSD and all, because they basically took his humanity away and so on. So that's the story, and lots of information there, a lot of stuff there.
I mean, I don't know where you go from there. I don't know what to say. I literally do not know what to say.
The screwed up part, or not screwed up part, the weird, one of the lessons in that, which is not easy to swallow, his attitude throughout the whole video is of thankfulness, to the point of, he says that I do not want to, I don't know, he said in the interview, it's in order to understand the dichotomy of the problem with what happened to him and his attitude and all sorts of stuff. The guy's got to be screwed up. Who isn't in this world? But come on, that's a situation. He said that early on he was completely pissed at the Canadians because the Canadians were the ones that allowed or opened the door to take out this resident or whatever of under their protection because of the United States insistency. They said, "Yep, we need that," and they flew him back. Like they did a lot of like, back and forth to get him where they wanted him. So he said, "I was pissed but not at the Americans." He said he's not living in America. I think he's living in, I don't know where he's living in right now, but the guy, yeah. If you look at his attitude and the way he's explaining what happened to him, it's not like, I'm going to go back and get my revenge. There's none of that. He's like, you know what? I'm screwed. They screwed me. I'm thankful to be alive. This is what happened to me. And so it's a very difficult, I felt like, wow, man, that's a lot. That's a lot. So yeah. I don't remember his name. I
mean, I stand by my earlier statement. I don't know what you say to that. I mean, obviously nobody knew that it was happening at the time. What can you say?
Well, there's a couple of things that I thought. So I thought a lot of things, but I thought to myself, there's a movie. I forget the actor, but he's a famous actor. I just can't quite place it. Is it that guy that works with Tarantino a lot?
I don't know what you're talking about, so I don't know.
No, I'm thinking out loud.
Okay.
Something Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson. So there's a movie where Samuel L. Jackson is a special ops guy, and there's a situation where they've hid bombs in an American city, and they've caught one of the guys, or I don't know but the general idea. And he comes into this warehouse where they have him, and they capture his family, I think. And in the movie, they want the information of where the bombs are. And the guy's not giving it up. So they proceed to do anything and everything in order to extract from him, in order to preserve the lives of Americans in this American city, or plus American cities. I don't know how big, I forget now. And so they do a lot of stuff to this guy. And then there's an observer, and the observer's trying to balance the thing. Like there's people with their roles, but the guy in charge of the beatdown is I think it's Samuel L. Jackson. And they go at it. So I try to put myself, it's a weird thing. Could I do that as an assigned job? I don't know that everybody is capable of stripping away humanity, the implications of the immorality of it, and just going to town on someone without the expectation of knowing or not knowing. You're going to town on someone. I think that is a very contentious thing in my mind. I can't reason that out yet at all at the moment, but I think that that's one point in this thing.
Well, that's why you don't have that job. I mean, not everybody could do something like that.
Yeah, I don't know that no, but putting yourself in the, so yeah, absolutely. I don't know that, but at the same time, given the right circumstance, because there's one thing, right? Like that's horrific. There's no pussyfooting around that in this scenario. This guy that was beat to hell and this and that was completely stripped of his humanity, immorally in every way. Do I see that as acceptable? I do not. I personally
Well, I
do
don't think
not.
anybody really does.
There are some people that would. If the guy, like in the movie, they know the guy because he set the bombs and he's the one in the recorder and this and that, and now that's a situation where it's known. So they even took his family. So I would stop at family by, I'm putting myself in that mentality. If you have evidence, and this is an international thing, I think, would one be capable if it's a personal vendetta? It's a question to what's ethical and what's allowable and so on and so forth. But anyways,
Well,
long story short, I'll just end with this and hear what you say. Long story short, it did become a question, although I didn't follow it at the time very much, about torture, the argument of torture enhanced interrogation. And this was in the context of what they did to that guy and whatever they did to the other people. And the thing was, they were selling on TV that this is not torture. And I remember a bunch of politicians, this is not torture. This is enhanced interrogation. I can lay it to rest in my esteem, in my criteria, that absolutely, if what they did to that guy was the going consensus, it was torture beyond torture. It was cruelty beyond cruelty. But they used the enhanced interrogation thing as a public tamping down, like, no, folks.
well, they are two separate things.
They may be, but that's what they were using to blanket. If in fact, because I doubt that this guy was the only guy being treated to such wonderful splendors, without evidence, I find it immoral, highly immoral.
Well, I won't argue that point.
Yeah.
I won't argue that point. But torture and enhanced interrogation are two different things. Enhanced interrogation are things like interruption of food, interruption of sleep cycle, a lot of psychological stuff with no touching. It's sleep deprivation, heavy exercise, heavy work, things like that, and then repeated questioning, repeated interrogation. That kind of thing is enhanced interrogation. Torture is physical, inflicting physical pain. And they are two different things. Like I said, I don't know what to say about it. I mean, it's and I don't mean to be flip or blasé about it. It's just that I'm ignorant on the subject, so I really don't have anything to say. I agree with you that it is immoral, but beyond that, there really isn't anything I can say.
Right. So if a situation arises, internet, and this is beyond our pay grade by leaps and bounds, but if a situation, so we're just sort of, I'm just posing it was thought provoking, and it was hurtful, because when one sees humanity, regardless of color, regardless of height, of weight, of if you look into hell, it doesn't even have to be a human being. I could look at a sea turtle, and as long as there's gleam in its eye, I recognize that there's living essence in this creature. So I would probably be the worst person to put in a situation like that. But
me too.
Yeah, because it's like, I see value in, now then again, if somebody's coming at you with a hatchet, you have to snuff that out. So that's, but I see, because you're not.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure. Self-defense is self-defense,
Right.
And the situation with there's, the bombs are set to go off, and this is a guy that set them. Where the hell are they? And he's grinning at you. Desperate times call for desperate measures, because there are certain people who have, violated the terms of service agreement with the human race when they get to that point, So
well, yeah, because now they're going to inflict epic.
You're trying to stop an act that's going to kill a bunch of people. I mean, this is not time to light a campfire and sing Kumbaya. The gloves come off at that point. But lacking that type of circumstance, I mean, there's no justification for it. I don't think that any correctly thinking, sane, moral person would disagree with that. I don't think anybody would.
No,
you know.
I don't think so either.
So, but beyond that, I really don't have anything to say on it.
Well, another thing about it is the question of, because if you remember back then, the question was also posed. There was a lot of questions being posed that if you beat somebody, will they tell you the truth?
And that's why that's not really used. I mean, we were trained in handling POWs and things like that. And that was impressed on us more often than not, because the jokes would always, you always have that one guy who thinks he's Mr. Billy Badass. And, well, I would just do this. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. And here's why. You can't trust what they're going to tell you, because I'll say anything to make it stop. So you don't know what information you're going to get out of them. That's why you used enhanced interrogation. You get them to the point mentally to where it's hard to form a lie.
Yeah, it was a very shocking. I stayed with it, and actually, once I was done with it, I messaged you, because it was about the same time that I had finished wrapping up my editing. And I said, you know what, I'm going to tell Mark about this, because, it might pop up in the conversation during the show, because I find it of value, at least, well, on various levels. But I had just freshly gotten done. Actually, we talked that evening as well. But I found it chock full of really screwed up stuff, enough that lessons, or at least pondering, comes of it. It was
disturbing.
It was disturbing. Well, you know why? Because it also, on one level, is the human level, and another level is, I'm going to be honest with you, I felt like, well, this is our entrusted government. I'm rational enough to understand that we're not just a monolith, and we're also individuals. And I'm so, you know what I'm saying? So, like, under the banner of America, and we have critiques about this around the world, pointed at the United States. And you can point that critique at any banner or any flag, and come with a sliding scale of critiques, let's say, because there exists a thing called the United States of America, but there also exists within that human beings that hold all sorts of positions, titles, that are affecting markets, that are doing the lawns, that are, it's a group of people within a geographic location that are held together by culture, but also a set of ideals and laws and a constitution. So there's all these, but not everybody. My ideals of America is not going to necessarily be, maybe closer, very close to your ideals. We might have a different, but I think that we'd pair up within the concept of, individual rights, the dignity of it, just a bunch of stuff. But that doesn't mean that everybody within the scope of our country, this is, I think, easy to, you could bet money on it, would agree to that. Take, for instance, people burning and looting. They have no concept of respect and dignity for human beings, individual. You can't hit somebody with a rock 3,000 miles away from an event that occurred that has nothing to do, but you're hitting somebody with a rock or hitting an old lady. What the hell is it? No, unacceptable. So it made me question, like, man, these people are in these positions where they have this situation and stuff. And so it's a very conflicting thing inside your soul, is what it did.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't know what to say to that.
I mean, what can you say? So yeah. So there was that. Um, and at the same time, there was the lesson of the Bedouins. He explained that, oh, the Bedouins, I didn't know this, but the Bedouins of Mauritania, I am part of the Book tribe. And I was like, the Book tribe? And he explains it, right? Because I have nobody had, Jordan Peterson had no idea. Nobody had an idea. I'm part of the Book tribe. And the Book tribe, and there's many tribes. Oh, many tribes. Well, what? There's the War tribe. There's the Book tribe. And what they do is, I guess they focus around, and there's the Repair tribe. So they work like little clans.
Communities within the community.
Yeah, and so their purpose is to do this, and the other person's group is to do that, and they sort of work in this sort of like, and that's just the way they do it. And so I found that interesting as hell. And he was part of the Book clan, and I was like, holy smokes, So I learned that, and other lessons along the way. But boy,
yeah,
dude, insane. So yeah, so I guess that's it. Do you want to? Anything else? Because
that's that. Yeah, no, I got nothing to add. I mean, what can I say?
Well, look, it's a pretty brutal thing, but within brutal, there's also layers of screwed up stuff. So the base Guantanamo is actually in Cuba, and it's controlled by the United States, and it's fenced off. And we've looked at the map. The people in that, which I'm having to assume that many of them are actual literal combatants and doing bad things. I'm willing to accept the possibility that some, and I'm sure that there's a court process and all that. Obviously, in this case, it happened by sheer luck that he got free, but I'm sure that there's a system and that there's situations that happen. Well, there's all that going on in this place within an island that itself is a prison. Now, it's not a prison in terms of, if you remember the roach motels, the roaches check in, but they don't check out. No, the roaches or the humans that are in the place, if you're a roach that is coming from abroad to enjoy the thrills of, you can come in and go out because you're bringing in your money, and your money's what stays. But it's a prison. So there's also the concept of a prison within a prison with a prison at different levels. That's also kind of playing in the brain. That's like everything has a level of you're entrapped. So it's insane. So yeah, so there was that. Whatever. I think you're done, right?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. All right. So listen, we go live every Tuesday here on YouTube, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube, every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific time. And we also have a website called the Trampled Underfoot Podcast website and .com, and you can catch our past episodes on there by pressing the Wayback Machine button. And by the way, if you happen to be catching this episode and you're like, wow, heavy duty, or whatever you might be thinking, just to let you know that we cover a vast amount of different subjects within pop culture. Sometimes we skim the edges of, like, let's say, conspiracies as well. Seems to be that one of our most popular ones is a lizard reptilian agenda thing. But we talk about, vintage music and all sorts of things, history and such. So we also have a Facebook page, and that's Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. But we're also sponsored by
Steve Nealon at Harneal Media, your one stop. Oh boy, let me try that again. You set me up perfect too. Steve Nealon at Harneal Media, your one-stop website shop. Steve can take care of you. If you're looking to get a web presence, you're looking to get online, maybe you want to build a web store, you just want to start a family blog, You have an idea for some merch. You want to make t-shirts. You want to make hats. Steve's your man. He can hook you up with an on-demand printing company. Orders come in. They handle the printing. They handle the shipping. You just watch the orders come in and sit back and smile. He can hook you up with that company. He can set you up with a website, set you up with a web store to sell those items or your own items, plans, electronic downloads, you name it. He's your guy. He'll do as much or as little as you want. If you're a total newbie and never done anything like this before, he can set you up. If you're an old pro at websites and just need a web host, he can set you up. Some of the best pricing I've seen around, and it's personal service. When you're dealing with Harneo Media, you're dealing with one man. You're dealing with Steve himself personally. Check him out online at harnealmedia.com. That's HARNEAL media.com. Sponsor the Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com website.
All right, so if you want to stick with us, we have an after show. For the rest of you, we'll catch you next week, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. Catch you later.
Bye.
Dude, you were so deflated. Like, I could literally feel the I felt like sharing it inside, remembering it. It was sort of a little bit like an exorcism, but it's much worse listening to it than actually what I said. But I felt like I was like releasing a little bit of that tension because I felt sad for the guy. I just felt sad. But watching you take it in, you're actually like, and I don't know how you're feeling inside, but the outer shell, it's almost like you were reflecting back at me the same crap that I felt from watching the listening to the story.
Well, you know, when you hear something like that and you're supposed to be the good guy, you know, what do you say? And I mean, because that was a lot to take in. And especially having not seen it myself, I can't form an opinion on that.
Yeah. Well, remember, so look, I mean, it's not, I'm already coming into the story knowing that there are, and we all do, that there are secret levels of protection that occur, outside of the structure that we enjoy out there. But a movie's one thing and an innocent guy's another. You know, there's a lot of stuff there. You know, there's a lot of stuff procedural and stuff, but sometimes procedure, we're not built for that as citizens, unless you're particularly skilled in whatever thing you're skilled at to do that. Humans aren't meant to, not normal people or even malfunctioning people are not meant to, like, my goodness, no, man. So it's disturbing, but I do understand that beyond there's unpleasantries.
Yeah.
There's unpleasantries.
I mean, to say the least. But, you know, it's...
I'm not excusing it, by the way.
No, I don't assume that you are. You know, it's just a lot to take in. I mean, what do you say to that? You know? Let's see here. Thomas Grimm says, how do you sort reality out of the narrative? Why is that particular tribal model more convincing than the guy's other fabrications? You know, I can see that the guy made up a bunch of lies and everything under questioning, under interrogation after being beaten and this, that, and the other. Why is what he's saying now more believable than what he said before?
That's a problem. See, look, the problem with this story from the vantage point of an American, actually, just as an individual living in America, as a person, that I'm sure that everybody else or a lot of people feel, is that we do understand that if we do something wrong and it rises to the heights, that there's a series, even if you're not educated on the law, you understand by watching enough like TV that they're not going to take you to the backwoods and like shoot you in the back of the brains and steal your car and rape your they human we know that we have a series of that we have a very special thing, even though there's all sorts of bad stuff that occur. And it's hard for us to, or at least for me, although I understand that it's possible, that there's situations that they don't practice the normal. They're not protected. They're not protected like we are, because they fall outside of what we're protected by.
Yeah, but to the point of, I mean, what's your opinion on that? To the point of the question is, why is the story he was telling Jordan Peterson more believable than the stuff he was telling the CIA folks to get him to stop beating it?
What he was telling Jordan Peterson compared to what he was telling the guy. No, he's telling Jordan Peterson after the fact.
Understood, but what I'm getting at is what makes his story so believable?
To who? To me?
To you. Yeah, your opinion. What makes him believable?
If he were a bad guy.
Well, I'm not saying he is a bad guy, but let's just back up and let's just say, what if he's making a lot of this up as he goes along? Oh, that's all I'm asking.
I see. So I can't. So to assume that he wasn't interrogated and beat up and all that stuff is a reasonable thing, if you like. I am not a lawyer, but considering that he went in front of a judge and all this and that, from my perspective as a viewer, not as an attorney in Kenosha, but from my perspective as a viewer, and from all that we've seen where it did come out in courts, if you recall the last 20 years, where they did do sodomy and they did all sorts of stuff. And I don't know each case, is what I'm saying. I'm just transmitting what I saw and how I felt about it.
Sure.
I'm not making a claim.
Well, no. I was just basically wondering, was it his body language? Was it the way he presented it? I mean, do you think he was embellishing it, or okay, my first question would be, did any of this come out in court when they released it?
Well, again, so how could I put this? I personally don't have all the materials of what went down, like any number of other things. I am quite willing to be disproven or for that to be, because I'm not saying, I'm just repeating what I saw. I'm quite willing to accept if proven. So here's the thing. If you have proof, put it on the table.
Right.
And I'm willing to look at that. There's also a thing called honor. So, like, let's say Mark and I, this is for the audience or for anybody, this is my belief system. Maybe you think it's wrong, but there's a thing called honor. So let's say Mark and I are talking and Mark says A, B, and C. I can prod and probe his thoughts and ideas and so on and so forth in an intellectual way. So there's a level of that you can, but if somebody else, I'm not going to use you if somebody comes in and says, I was in prison for 14 years and this is and that and blah, 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 and not even in prison, in a gulag, meant for this and that, and I was innocent. If you get all that, off on the street, I can't do anything with that. So I'm either believe or disbelieve the person. I'm inclined to say that he's taking the time, unless I see an angle going on. For this guy, it could very well be that let's do an alternate story where he was captured, but he was treated maybe not so good, but maybe not so bad. There was nothing on him. That part's true, but they really didn't beat him. Now think what's happening here. He's saying that the guy's freaking the way he is because he was. But what are we doing? We're trying to excuse the beating because that's the part we don't like. So there's a reverse thing there.
Well, yeah, I get that.
But let me finish the bit.
Okay.
So let's say he lied about all that, and he gets out. Like he was innocent, but they didn't quite hurt him. And let's say that that's the story. He gets out, and the idea is, well, hell, because he's from the book tribe. See, so now with my book tribe experience, I'm going to create this beautiful world, and so you can go down that line. And I'm not this. You could go ahead and do that. I'm not. I told the story as what I saw and what I felt. So I don't know. I don't have the evidence either way, but I do know there's a history of what happened. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, no, I was just wondering if there was anything you could point to, the guy's conviction, his body language, the way he talked, that made his story believable. I'm not saying the guy was a liar. I'm not saying he embellished. But you had to have seen something that made you go, damn.
Well, intellectually, he's on Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Peterson is, I mean, he's a psychologist.
He is not small potatoes, and I don't think he would be easily fooled.
So he's being interviewed by him because there's some legit. Jordan Peterson, by accepting him onto his channel and his show, is giving this guy's story credibility on one level.
Okay.
On another level, but then again, Jordan Peterson, see, it could go, you could say, well, Jordan Peterson's just doing it for the views because this was 5. You could do that, and I'm not into, but now you're just getting into.
Yeah, a guy like that doesn't need the views that bad.
Right. So. But there's also the issue of he went in front of a judge, which I don't have I'm sure that one could do that. I'm not interested in doing that, but in order to be released from that detention center, you have to really be there can't be any dirt on you to the level. I mean, they're not going to release someone that has
yes, they've done it.
They will.
Oh yes, they have done it.
So that there you go. So maybe this guy did all those things and he's concocting it. And Jordan Peterson had, but you see what I'm saying? You could. I'm not
saying that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I was just wondering if there was anything that you could point at, the conviction in his voice or something like that made you think, man, this guy's telling the truth.
I'll be honest with you. When it started, the reason I pressed on the button was because I saw Jordan Peterson there, and then I saw this guy with the wrapped headgear on. And I looked at it, and I saw Guantanamo, and I said, I know the experience secondhand from the people on the island that are also trying to do some sort of escaping in a different context. But now this is a place within the place that people are also screwed.
Oh, okay.
And so I said, you know what? Let me see what's there. And when I went in, that began. So I was like, holy crap, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That was it. That was all.
Yeah.
Jim Dockrell wants to know if the guy's name was Omar Kadir.
I'd have to.
Okay.
I don't do good with
Okay. No worries. Just
I'm sure if you think that that's the name, well, one could look for it. I'll tell you right now. Let me, as you continue, I'll search and see if it is. I can't find where Dockrell said that.
Oh, that's it was up a ways.
I found it. You know what's screwed up? You can't even grab it, copy paste. You can't even do that.
No, you can't. You probably could over on YouTube, but not through StreamYard. You can't. But
I'll tell you right now if it is. No, that guy looks like a singer. Doc roll.
nope. Okay. Well, everything else is about fast food. All the other comments are about fast food.
Well, I didn't expect it to be that. I thought it would be like an interesting aside, but I didn't take into account that I thought you were going to be more just analytical and not necessarily carry a little bit of that weight. But I feel that you carry.
It
you
was
carry-
a lot to take. It was a lot to take in. I mean, what can you
Yeah.
say to that? I mean,
Yeah, I took that.
I was kind of
weight-
blindsided. I'll put it that way.
Well, that's why I shared the thing with you. But again,
Yeah, I
feel
know,
like-
and I didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing. I got about 10 minutes into it, and then we had to leave. So it was just kind of, and I never got back to it.
Yeah, it. But listen, on the level of what, who was that person that said that question about what made you believe?
Well, he didn't go that far. That was Thomas Grimm.
Okay, so
How do you sort the reality out of the narrative?
okay, so that's what particular tribal? Okay, so the thing is that it's true. That is an important question to ask, simply because we can get bogged down on that, because it's a valid question. Because we could forever, minus having the information in front of you. So I could tell you a bunch of stuff. So I could tell you and Mark a bunch of stuff about me. Mark and I have had conversations for the better part of like 4 or 5 years, or 4 years, something like that.
Somewhere in that neighborhood, yeah.
So there's been a lot of exchange between us on numerous topics, not to mention doing this show, but we've had conversations that have to do with, you get to know people. It could be even on the level that he's probably not going in this direction, but I am. It could be that everything that I've told Mark up until this point is a complete farce, and I'm just freaking good at it. I don't know to what end, but let's say maybe it's just maybe I'm just that cuckoo, and for some reason I've wanted to build the narrative that I have in my life towards Mark, so that Mark thinks that this is the narrative, but in truth it's like completely, I have like a wife sitting there looking at me, she's holding a bat, who knows.
Now that I can picture.
Well, I have told you. So there's always room for. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but in reference to Mark and you as someone that we're interacting through now, Mark would have invested in me more credibility due to our back and forth than, say, you and me. And you could switch that around to any combination. So familiarity and repetition and so on. So
and that's why I took Thomas's question further than what he was actually asking, and was trying to get, because I do know you. You're a little bit more open-minded to me on certain things, but not on other things. And you have a skeptical streak yourself. I think all healthy people do.
Yeah.
So some things you are willing to accept the person at face value, and in other things you're not. You're more, well, let me check that out on my own and see if I can corroborate or dispute that claim. So that's why I was wondering, what was it about this particular person that made it so believable?
Well, we're not talking about a situation,
but
we're not talking about a situation like the lizard people. So Like,
You understood, because you do have to go back to what does he stand to gain by telling the story in the way he told it. Well, book deals, movie rights, things like that. That's my cynical side talking.
you could think that.
And using Jordan Peterson as the springboard because, like I said, Jordan Peterson doesn't need the views.
Yeah.
He's got a career. He's not relying on AdSense to pay the rent, okay? So, and there's a level of legitimacy that comes along with being interviewed by him. So, there is that as well. And that makes me kind of back away from the book or the movie or the what have you. But only to a point, because you and I both know that there are people in Hollywood right now
that would love
watching that interview and are trying to get a hold of this guy. So we'll see.
But remember, so this is what I see. And you're a perfect example of that according to what you're saying right now. Mm-hmm. I don't box you into that, but using what you just said to me, mm-hmm. and try and refrain from for the moment, mm-hmm. It appears as you're making an excuse or allowing an excuse as an escape route for the honor and goodness of America.
No.
And well, refrain for half a second. It may not be that, but I'm seeing that or a sense of that, because the truth of it being real is very hurtful.
Okay, I'm not going that far with it.
Okay, but I've thought this as well, so maybe I'm projecting.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do get a sense of you're not very.
I'm not comfortable with it. Who would be?
Okay, but this is what I would say. Especially coming from not my particular stance, because remember, but from a secondhand source through my parents. You have a country, so you could take any number of politicians. So you have a country that is symbolic of ideals that we, for the most part, or a vast majority, kind of get on with that ideal. And we have that, and we push that forward through generations. And that's sort of like a glue, and there's an idea and stuff. I mean, just, it is what it is. It's that. America has enjoyed a very long, notwithstanding a lot of punches from the exterior, enjoyed a very long stretch of centuries, 2.5 centuries, since it's where these ideals have been cultivated into a society that's a brand new society, really, with very strong individualistic rights, let's say, and it's a very particular, specific thing that you don't necessarily. So, but America, although from the exterior would use something like this and say, "Aha, you son of a guns," and they can do that. A bad actor, under the banner of which you brought into the conversation, does not represent the truth of the matter.
Right, but see, you're going way farther than I ever. That's okay. Not what was going on. That's not what was going on.
All right.
What was my last comments were not trying to wiggle out of any kind of reality. If anything, my last comments about book deals and movie rights and stuff was a critique of the Hollywood machine.
Okay.
Because that's next. That's why I said, that there are screenwriters or producers who are listening to that interview right now. Yeah. With an eye for holy cow. I mean, do you remember a movie? This is way back. This was in the 70s. It may have been before you were born, but it's been around. It was a movie called Midnight Express.
I never watched it, but I remember that movie.
About a guy who was imprisoned in Turkey for drug smuggling and the horrors that he went through. Is based on a true story. And the Hollywood hype machine behind that movie made it more than the movie deserved, in my opinion. Now, I got to say, I was pretty young when I saw it. I was in my teens. And the story to me was more a lesson in what not to do when you're outside of the U.S. Don't automatically assume that you are an American citizen and I'm protected by the Constitution. The minute you leave the U.S., you're not. To me, that movie was more a lesson on stay on your toes, keep your mouth shut, your ears open, your hands in your pockets when you're overseas. If you ever go outside the U.S., and I never forgot that. It was more an indictment on American perception than on any legal system of any other country, to me. But I remember the Hollywood hype. And it was, I mean, it was supposed to be the biggest, absolutely most realistic. And Rick French is right. Very graphic movie for its time. But your opinion, Rick, do you think it lived up to the hype? Do you remember the Hollywood machine? And it was more than just the Hollywood machine. It was the subject on talk shows. It was the subject on news analysis shows. On how these people are treated, how American citizens are treated when they travel overseas, and this, that, and the other. Totally failing to mention the fact that this wasn't a choir boy who got picked up skipping his way to school. This was a bad character. Now, it's not excusing anything they did to the man, because you're absolutely right. There is basic human dignity, basic human respect that is deserved by everybody walking the face of the earth. But I don't know. It was just, to me, I think more was made of it outside of Hollywood than should have been made of it. Because, well, there was a lot of screaming and yelling about this, that, and the other. And it's like, dude, what do you want to do? You want to go invade? What do you want to do?
You're saying, from the exterior, perceptions were that you're judging us like we're animals and you guys are the good guys.
That's what America was. That's what the feeling was, that if you run a prison like that, you are the animals, you are the bad guys, And I'm not saying that anything that happened to that guy was a good thing. I mean, he was severely beaten, tortured, and things like that, just simply due to the nature of the crime. And that was Rick. He says, I thought that in the U.S. they tried to use it as an anti-drug movie. This is why you don't buy drugs in Turkey. And that's an excellent point. There was a lot of anti-drug. It was a lot of anti-drug propaganda going out about that time. Well, my entire reason for bringing up that movie is I see this as something very similar, and in fact, I'm still surprised, and it's, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I don't remember his name, that U.S. soldier who was arrested in Mexico and held in a Mexican jail. I can't remember his name. He was held for a long, long, long time. I'm still surprised that his story hasn't been turned into a movie. That's where I was going with this, that This is fodder for the Hollywood propaganda machine.
Well,
So
I mean,
that's all I was getting at.
so on in one level, the most for me, the most important level there is not protection of the group. However, I can say that from my vantage point, I think that the most important level, and I would say this as an American, is the individual. I think that
Uh-huh.
individual rights is is the greatest way to ensure the best standard of living for each person. Although some may go by the wayside because if you're individually responsible for yourself and your actions and at best your family, a little bit extended your friends and your community, if you focus on the individual, um, you take personal. If it's group, I'm part of this clan or this group, and that, well, now you have, you're now it's but that's on my level. There is a flip side to that. A president, a
Mm-hmm.
Congress, a judicial system. They're looking at the overall good. Luckily, we have a judicial system that looks at individual cases in order to, what you call adjudify, um,
Adjudicate.
adjudicate. I just invented adjudify. We got to
That's
adjudify.
the act of adjudication
Um,
or adjudication. Adjudicate. Yeah, and see now that also shows that you're stepping out of your role. I'm the guy. I'm the verbicator here. I invent verbs.
you're like a bowl. You're like a bowl in a china shop today.
Exactly, but it's just got a steep learning curve. That's one I heard Linda told me about the other day.
But
Learning curve.
you get my
I
point
get the
from.
point.
So what I just did there with that
Mhm.
argument. So I'm very in the camp of the individual rights side of
Well,
things.
so am I.
But what I did there, and nobody's gonna. I mean, maybe us here, but beyond the scope of that, they're not going to realize the little in that I gave because I'm making a justification for the other side as well. So what I'm really doing, if you think out what I said before,
Mhm.
so there's this sort of movement of total government, and then there's this total movement of no government. And basically, what I just made an argument for is that no, everything is important. And I guess the beyond that is, but there needs to be a balance. You can't have extreme. You can't have the extreme. If any extreme, it should go towards the side of the individual. But there's a level which protects the country so that individuals can act and go about their business, and
Right.
that's but we're not animals
Right.
either. So, there's all that. And I guess this story disturbs a lot of like stuff that, well, no, how could that? It did for me. I'm not,
Yeah.
it did for me. And
Well, it did to me too, and I didn't even hear the whole story. So yeah.
I find it interesting that you react. I don't know the full extent, but I could see
Well,
the
yeah, it made me
same.
uncomfortable
Yeah.
right off the bat, and it also made me feel foolish for not going ahead and taking the time to finish watching that, so I
Well,
could hear it from his perspective.
but it was an extremely long thing. The good
Yeah,
stuff
it
or
was.
the bad stuff comes at the halfway, like going towards the end, and
Yeah,
that's the part that takes a while to get to. But
yeah.
yeah,
Well, what can you say? I mean, it was a. Let's go back here and see. The
and
guy's name, because Jim Dockerell's asking about him. The guy's name was Mohamedou Ould Salahi. Mohamedou. Second middle name is Ould. Last name Slahi.
I was going to say that, and to Tom's point, I think it was Tom, right?
Yeah.
I think that his question, which you expanded on, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
I still think that it was a completely valid thing to look to what the question that he posed and that you expanded on. I think it's a valid thing because let us also not get to, let us always try to be, my opinion doesn't have to be yours, but let us all always, my opinion, always try to be human towards others and just try to be human. But let's also not get comfortable in our, suffering for others at the same time, and because of it, are just wiping away the slate and allowing information. We have to be wise and thoughtful in what we're examining and realize that there's possibilities as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that might not conform to what's coming into our eye sockets.
Right. Right. It's a tough thing, and especially from the standpoint of, like I was talking about earlier, we're supposed to be the good guy.
Right. But that's why I said that we are. Because
I think overall and in general we are.
Well, okay. So I'm going to give you a really basic, or not basic, but like a very like maybe crossing the. So I'll do it this way. I may not like a certain politician that's in a position of power,
right,
that is hell bent on doing whatever action pointing in a direction. Let's say that I feel is the opposite direction as one should go, and I might see it as endangering our way of life.
Right.
It could be maybe on an economic level. It could even be on a war level. It could be one could see that. Although that person represents his position within our country and so on and so forth and this and that, in the realm of politics, let's say, we are not all in line because it's built into our system, and people that cross certain boundaries, we do have a process. And do some people with excessive power get away? Yeah, they do. But our system, we're not supposed to hurt people.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's what I mean when I say we're supposed to be the good guy. And overall, in general, we are. Yeah. And you can go down the list of cases. I mean, the 2003, 2004, something like that. That huge earthquake in the Indian Ocean caused that tsunami in Indonesia.
Yes.
The first people on the scene was the U.S. Navy. I mean, they had helicopters and they had hospital ships. I mean, the fleet came in and just evacuated as many people as they could and rendered aid and started searches and this, that, the other. They were the first people there. I mean, and you can go down the list of natural disasters around the world where we have been able to respond. We respond without question.
Well, yeah, I mean,
so I think overall we are the good guy. It's when we find things like this that gives people a gut check that makes them think, how good are we? And can we be better? Because you're absolutely right. What kind of person does that? What kind of person actually wields the weapon? So, a sociopath, basically.
So in that position, so I don't. So okay, so let's think clear. So, or whatever, as clear as one can. A person that's in that position to draw out information and such, it could be a few things, but I'm going to narrow it down to a professional that only does that. or someone that kind of fell into it because he's got to do it because of a chain of command or whatever. Those are the two variables in my mind.
I'm gonna back out of that second one simply because I was just following orders doesn't work.
So if
You know,
so, okay,
it takes a person with a certain type of mentality and a lack of empathy to be able to do something like that. And your average GI, even a military policeman or a professional interrogator, on average, is not capable of doing something like that. Maybe they come in after the fact, but there have got to be a certain type of personality to be able to do that.
well, okay. So let's say they're so if they're a professional doing that, they have to feel. Well, they don't have
Nothing.
to. They have to feel
Nothing.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that has to be a very dangerous person. Um, um, yeah, I can't because to her, I mean, imagine just pulling fingernails and stuff. Who
Yeah, I
knows what the
mean,
hell? I can't see it. I don't
me
see it.
either. Happy Thanksgiving, Rick. Have a good night. Thanks for
Have a
hanging with us.
Was this a Thanksgiving present or what?
Yeah, really. We I'm sorry for the subject change, but we don't really do a Thanksgiving show. You know, we acknowledge it and we forgot to last week, but so and this is going to come out, 4 or 5 days after Thanksgiving, so it's kind of like whoops,
There's
we
gonna be
missed
a
it.
lot of burping and farting after they hear this.
Yeah, really.
Belching and
Let me throw something at you here, Jim. Just because it was on a naval base does not mean that the Navy had anything to do with it.
right.
That's just the facility. Believe me when I say that other agencies come in and do things on military facilities all the time.
Yeah.
There were certain, when I was stationed at Fort Ord, California, we would go to the field at a little bitty post nobody's ever heard of called Camp Roberts. And Camp Roberts was an old World War II training base. Its claim to fame was it had an impact area where we could fire artillery rounds because it was out in the middle of nowhere. And what wasn't broadcast but is well known now was it was also one of the biggest satellite communication bases on the West Coast. And there were certain places on that post where you could kind of walk out of the tree line and look up this valley and see these giant antennas. I mean, these things were absolutely enormous. The size of each antenna, there's 3 of them, and each antenna was probably the size of your average Walmart supercenter. That size, that big. And there were fences all around it, 3 rows deep, and big signs that said the use of deadly force is authorized. They wanted you away from there. And none of that had anything to do with the U.S. Army. It was 100% CIA and NSA. They would admit that much. But the U.S. Army did not have any kind of jurisdiction within the wire. And you were flat out told that if you got within 10 feet of it, you were in violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and you would be handled accordingly. So there are, quote unquote, as you put it, specialists who do operate on military bases, but the military have nothing to do with it.
Let me throw something at you, and I don't know what you'll make of this, but as a fact, personal fact, my father went into the U.S. Army in 1962, trained in U.S. bases, Fort Jackson, and in Fort Knox, and then was relocated during the Cuban Missile Crisis, relocated to Central America to a CIA base because the operation had CIA involvement. It was not on the up and up. The public could not know. It was going to be a secret invasion, a coup type thing, using these Cuban American army trainees through the CIA
Mm-hmm.
to go invade. So there's a gray area.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're talking about Operation Nassau, right?
No, that was
No.
that
Okay.
was
That
during
was
the
different.
Cuban. Yeah, that was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Nassau was after.
Okay. Okay.
But there you go. NASA. Well, they weren't after that. They weren't in the military anymore. They were just
Okay.
used as militia people.
Okay. Okay.
So
So he
they're
was not in the army anymore during Operation Nassau.
not. No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, clandestine things happen all the time, and they're on a need to know basis. And for the most part, the public doesn't have a need to know. I mean, we can sit there and scream, "Oh, we have a right to know." No, you don't. No, you don't. That's been upheld in court time after time after time. You don't have a right to know, and you don't have a need to know.
Think about what they were. So, in contrast, since this is a conversation, what they wanted to do during Project Nassau, which was 66, 67,
Okay.
they were funded to go on their own because everything they were trying to get rid of Castro, the U.S. was,
Mm-hmm.
but they couldn't do it on the up and up because Russia and the U.S. and Russia had already made a deal and nuclear, so it was a big deal. But
Yeah.
they still wanted that guy out because apart from what they did to the Cuban people, Americans had established many businesses from sugar to telephone to in Cuba casinos. It was like a continuum of back and forth. That's where people went to make money and all sorts of stuff. And they weren't too happy about what had happened. So there were close ties with the Cubans for the Americans on the level of capitalism and so on. And so they were planning in 66, 67 and attempted from the Keys to Haiti to knock off their dictator over there,
Duvalier, yeah.
Duvalier, and then gather the people there, and from there go to Cuba and then knock off that one. And all of this from the perspective of these alphabet agencies back then in the 60s, under the radar of what we would know as the public. It was not successful, by the way. Funny enough, there's a whole story behind that. But so if they did it then, you can't say they do it now. But if I had to bet money, there's all sorts of things that happen that we are not privy to.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And like you said, we can't. What can we do with that? We don't. We could speculate. So our position is to speculate and be Americans.
Mm-hmm.
But certain things are beyond. Now, if something comes out like a beating that was uncalled for, it's just simply uncalled for.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt in my mind. You're absolutely right on that. But I can tell you with a certain degree of confidence that there are still clandestine things going on that you have no idea about. And I have no idea about.
We have no idea what the hell's going on.
Because
we have no idea.
They have to keep secrets.
No, I know, but I'm saying that the irony is that we have no we don't know what things have occurred that have averted complete disaster of not only us, but we don't know.
No, we don't.
We don't.
And there are people that'll say, well, the government could end this controversy. That they don't want to end the controversy. They want the speculation. Because the speculation is the diversion. Pay attention to this hand. Go ahead, argue about it. Pay attention to this hand. Keep going. You don't need to know what that hand's doing. Just pay attention to this hand. Keep the argument alive. The minute that argument is settled, they got to find something else. There's a lot of stuff going on that we will never know about. There are things that happened in World War I that we don't know happen.
Yeah, and we can't. And as a human being, as a human being,
probably never will.
Yeah, as an individual, a human being. So, depending on the time you have allotted in a day, maybe your book reading time or your computer surfing time across America, people can, and maybe you have a discipline that you enjoy writing or doing this. So everybody partakes in the process in their own level. And then there's levels that are beyond our comprehension that might be more than likely benefiting us to great degrees, that by its very nature is secret, and therefore we are completely unappreciative of. But with that, to be fair, there could be nefarious things as well.
Sure.
And we just can't do anything about it because we're not privy. We are only limited to our little abode.
Yeah. We have no need to know.
So, that's where it ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're kind of choiceless.
Yeah,
you can't force the issue.
Yeah, and at best, you have to fix that kitchen door, and that's your focus in life.
Yeah.
We're not meant for that. Whatever, and so, but these are interesting things, and it shows that people can have, a conversation that's a little bit broader than the normal scenario, and it's disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it is. Okay, I think we need to end this.
Right.
We've been on for 2 hours.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, listen, enjoy your turkey. Have a safe week. We hope you enjoyed this show. Obviously, you know that we talk about different stuff, and this was a little bit, maybe you guys feel different about it, but I could see Mark, so I enjoy the fact that we expand on things and go in different areas that might be, so this was a very different show. I have to acknowledge I didn't expect it to go down this route. I thought it was going to be a little intellectual moment of consideration, and then that was it. But boy,
yeah.
All right. Catch you next time.
Have a happy Thanksgiving, y'all, and we'll see you next week.